Hello YouTube, Jere Kirkpatrick here. I would like to thank everybody that came to the metal bashing meet. You made it a resounding success. It was great for everybody that attended. I'd like to make a request of anybody that was at the event who took pictures or video while you were here, especially that of Gene Winfield's talk on Saturday morning. I was hoping to do the video work and help the demonstrators as they needed help, but that proved to be quite quixotic. I found that after watching the video, especially on Gene Winfield's portion, that I got the video but the microphone had been turned off, so I have no audio to go along with the video on his demonstration. We had some fantastic demonstrators, as you who were there can attest. I'm going to name them off in the order that they presented. On Saturday morning, Ron Covell greeted everybody and told them a little bit about the layout of the weekend, how it was going to go, who the demonstrators were and such. I was the first one up, and I just gave a pretty much just a show and tell around my shop, explaining how I have it arranged so that I'm making the best use of such a small area, having everything on wheels and a thing in its place. Next came Mick Clark, who made a small fender. Then came Gene Winfield, who kind of explained how he got started back just after World War II, and did a little bit on the whiteboard on how he goes about chopping a top. He also talked a little bit about how he got into making cars for the movie industry. After Gene's lecture was over, we broke for lunch, and the whole afternoon was spent on several of the guys brought their own projects in, so the demonstrators and other participants helped them along with their projects. We also had a drag car here, and out in the east pasture were many of the motorcycles that Aaron Greene had built, and other cars that were of interest. On Sunday morning, Mick came back in. He was the first one up, and he put a wired edge around the fender that he had demonstrated the day before. And then came Aaron Greene. What a fantastic demonstration he did. He made a stainless tip for one of the motorcycles that he is working on now. And he gave a 19-minute talk prior to even starting the physical demonstration. And he had the audience captivated. It was an awe-inspiring talk that he gave, and I'm going to show you a video of that 19 minutes in this video. In fact, it was so good that Ron Covell was next up, and he afforded Aaron his time to continue his demonstration, and then we would break for lunch. After lunch, we had the raffle, which was just chock full of the different stuff that different companies had donated, and I'm sure that everybody went home with something of interest from the raffle. As soon as the raffle was over, Ron Covell came back in and did this demo, which was the layout and fabrication of a small tank that would go right behind the seats of a 1932 Ford Roadster. If you are a beginner or a very experienced metal fabricator, this that I'm going to show you now of Aaron Greene's speech on Sunday morning, I'm sure you will get something out of it. So if I were you, I would watch this thing all the way through. It's quite interesting. So here it is.
So Aaron Greene here is a remarkable man in that he builds custom motorcycles, and there's a lot of people who do that, but what Aaron brings to the table is not only a beautiful artistic design, but also a really good mechanical design. And he's been doing this a long time.
Yep.
And his demonstration today, as I understand it, is working with stainless, putting some very complex shapes into stainless, and he'll be using heat to soften the metal to aid the process.
Yep.
So Aaron, take it away.
Yep. Thanks, Ron. Obviously, it's an honor to be here and talk to all you guys. It's great to see Ron again. Me and Ron actually got to do a Discovery Channel show that we did for Billy Lane back, I was trying to remember, it was like 2004, 2005, on one of the biker build-offs where Ron actually built the tank for the bike. I was doing some assembly and some different things on the bike back in Florida for Billy, and so it's very cool to get to see Ron again and work with him. So basically, I've been doing motorcycles. Let's see, I started in the motorcycle world in '94. It was just right out of high school. I had started welding and shaping metal and doing different things at a young age. I was fortunate enough that my grandfather had a shop, and in that shop he allowed us to do kind of whatever we wanted, me and my brother. And so he would hand us a acetylene torch, I think at about 12, and all his big thing was like, don't point that thing at your brother because it's going to burn him. Outside of that, you guys do whatever the hell you want. And it wasn't that my grandfather taught a lot, he just enabled you to kind of do whatever you wanted. So he threw the tools in front of you and he let you try to figure it out. And from trying to figure it out at such a young age helped me understand that in anything we do, it just comes down to really looking at it and persisting to get there. And it's not that any one person, in my opinion, is tremendously more talented to the other person, but sometimes that guy persists to that finish. He keeps pushing himself to get to that product that then might stand out more than what other people see. It's not that he swings the hammer any different. It's not any of that. It's just he's very persistent at what he does to try to get that finish on anything, whether that's building a motorcycle, building a car, building a chassis, doing a piece of metal. I do tons of motor work, head design, flow, all sorts of stuff. I would say my wheelhouse is broad. I got to start in the shop at a very young age. I was started in an auto shop at 14, started doing motors and clutches and different things like that, and just kind of marched through. When I graduated high school, I went to go to college in Arizona there, and my passion was always motorcycles. I grew up racing dirt bikes. I loved motorcycles, and so in that, the first thing I tried to do was get a job at a motorcycle shop, and a custom Harley shop was, to me, the cool shop to be at. That was things were going on at that time that were really neat. We were just starting to try to put wider tires on bikes. We were slamming soft tails down. The aftermarket industry wasn't quite what it was as it is today. Today, everybody's so much more exposed to so much things we get off the internet, products. There's so many more products. There's chassis, there's sheet metal, there's all sorts of things you can buy to customize a motorcycle. Back at that point, there weren't so many things that you did. So you really were trying to create or come up with different aspects to customize a motorcycle, get that look that you wanted out of the motorcycle. And so I'm sure some of you had a chance to look at that exhaust system. That exhaust system, that stainless system I did, has a lot of little intricate parts on it, a lot of little pieces I machined on it. And really, you know, it's not as simple as just like, okay, it's an exhaust, and it's the point of creating an exhaust to get basically the gases out of the motor, and that's the point. That particular bike that exhaust system goes on has a lot of little intricate parts to it. It's a bike that's a mixture between mild steel and stainless steel. The frame is mainly mild steel. All the joints are all stainless, and then it's all inlaid with bronze everywhere. So it's got a lot of bronze inlay, so you have these textures and difference in metals, and the look of them are what you get out of that. And so I did like a really neat oil bag on that bike, and everything's inlaid with bronze on it, and a mixture between mild steel and stainless. So all the mild steel ends up getting coated and painted with a nice paint job. All the bronze ends up being a pinstripe to lead you to the paint. And then you have stainless back from that, like all the axle adjusters are stainless, the neck's stainless, all those different things. All the joints are encapsulated in stainless, so I still run all the mild steel up through the bike, and then basically run stainless, wrapping everything over it, so it's all double jointed, so it's really strong and comes out really nice. I started manufacturing motorcycle chassis in about 98, somewhere right in that zone. Manufactured chromoly chassis for the motorcycle world, for different manufacturers. Did a lot of chassis, made all the chassis for Billy's shop, which is Choppers Inc. Made a lot of the Indian Larry chassis, if you guys are familiar with him at all. Did all his production chassis, a lot of the twisted down tube chassis. And then manufactured my own brand of chassis under my motorcycle company, which was called Paramount Custom Cycles. I manufactured an OEM bike along with custom motorcycles, which I brought. The red one out there is an OEM bike that was actually a production motorcycle that was NADA listed, sold throughout the United States and certified to sell through California, and then I also certified those bikes to sell through Canada. The red bike I did for the Easy Rider Tour, that's called Cherry Bomb. I was on the Easy Rider Tour for multiple years, where they would actually pick only about 10 or 11 builders out of the world that would be on that tour, and they would fly us around to different events, talk to people, show our and that was, you know, basically just to drive the custom world forward. And then I was on another tour that was called, it started as the Camel Roadhouse Tour and then became the Hard Rock Tour. Hard Rock Hotels ended up sponsoring that tour. We built them a custom bike. They would travel it around the country basically, and then we'd go from there. And so that's a little bit of my background, what I've done. I was lucky enough to get started in this world very young, so I've been doing it. I got my first bike in a magazine in '95, and so it was, you know, back then it was hard. It was much different. Me and Jere had a conversation. It was much different than it is today. Back then it was very hard to get your foot in the door at any shop, and you couldn't just grab the information that every one of us has access to right now with YouTube or any of that stuff, where you can jam right in, you can grab techniques, you can grab information from someone. It was really hard to get someone to show you how to do something. And so growing up in that time, Ron obviously was, as I was growing up, was like, I used to read all his articles in the magazine. I used to, you know, watch his DVDs. It was actually VHS at that point, and I still have most of his tapes on VHS. And looking at all that stuff and trying to grab that information, because grabbing that information is key. I always felt, because I've done some other demos like Sturgis. We used to do a big demo. We did a thing for Discovery Channel that was called Blood, Sweat, and Gears Tour, where we'd actually build a motorcycle on stage. We'd take people through the process of building the motorcycle, and then we would give it away at the end of a rally to somebody that was in the armed services that happened to be at that rally. We'd just pick a random guy out of the audience and like, here's a motorcycle, take it. We did that for a couple years. It was a lot of fun. But it was always hard. It was hard to get that information. And so in understanding that and in trying to come up with ways to learn metal shaping, I always felt that some of the things I didn't get out of the videos or didn't get out of certain things were the little minor things of how hard to swing the hammer, how hard to hit something, how you pay attention to little aspects of shaping metal that sometimes make the difference of you accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish. Or sometimes, and I know everybody's at a different skill level here. It seems like some people are very, very talented in the audience, and some people might be just getting into metal shaping. Really, it was hard to grasp those little things because you'd go into a project and you'd go at it, and you'd go forward, you'd go backwards because you weren't realizing that the technique you were using was pushing you forward and then making you go backwards because you were either overstretching or overdoing something with the metal because you were swinging the hammer too hard. You weren't looking at the just very, very simple nuances of what needed to go into shaping the piece you were doing. Because it's sometimes not always brought across in the videos. It's easy to see, okay, this is what I'm doing, but it's very simple little things that sometimes make the difference of accomplishing what you're accomplishing or not accomplishing what you're accomplishing. And so just a little metal talk or whatnot before we dive into the project. So I always like to get people thinking. I always like to get people thinking about what they're trying to make, how they're going to make it, and just realize that one beautiful thing about metal is it'll shape. You can go forward, you can go backwards, but you can normally beat it into where you want to. If not, you throw it away and you start over again. Like Jere says, you know, the difference sometimes is my scrap pile's bigger than yours. That's part of it. You know, it's part of making scrap. It's part of really paying attention to the little things. I don't care what you're making. Just realize that every one of us, anybody who's trying to do something that's been doing it for a long time, they go forward, they go backwards. It doesn't, like I'm getting ready to do this exhaust tip. It could go smooth for me, it might not go smooth for me. I can't say how it's going to go until I get into it. It's not like this particular exhaust tip I make every day, day in and day out. If I did make this exhaust tip every day, day in, day out, I'd do it differently than I'm going to show you guys how to do it. I'm showing you guys how to do it as in how I would just make this exhaust tip because I'm only making one of them and I'm trying to create it. I'm normally at my shop working by myself, and so my technique to create this is going to be just that. It's going to be how I would go about doing it solo in my shop and trying to get there. If I was producing this exhaust system, I'd do it totally different. Even if I was making 20 of them, I'd do it totally different than I'm going to do it today. It's 14 gauge 304 sheet metal, stainless, which is can be difficult. It's just stiff. That's what makes it difficult. It doesn't always want to move in the direction you want it to move. It's hard to stretch. It's hard to shrink.
You speak great. The other day we were talking about how you approach a project, one of your projects, not only as how you're going to move the material and what it is that you're going to make, but what you were talking about, seeing it through art.
Correct, and that is one thing. No matter what, we're all here to shape metal or learn how to shape metal. Whether you're building a car, a motorcycle, I've done many art pieces, I've done furniture, I've done lots of different aspects of what you turn metal into. And one thing is we can all just be metal shapers. That's you know, we could be just body men and just do body work on a car or whatnot. But like I was telling Jere, you know, I try to bring in not only that shaping, but bring some kind of art to what I'm doing in that shaping. And in my opinion, if you address it that way, even if you're doing a simple panel, if you can put your own art into it, it'll help you finish that panel at maybe a higher quality than you would if you're just trying to get through that panel. Obviously Mick back there does these cobras, and there's a ton of art that goes into that. Each one of those bodies is different than the last body. I don't care if he's beating it on a buck or not. It doesn't matter. It's just as he said, that day when he's feeling that piece is how that piece comes out. That's why sometimes, and I agree with everything he said, sometimes you throw that piece and come back to it a couple days later, because if your energy level, if your thought process is everything you're not trying to get into that panel is gonna go in that panel. And so if you're frustrated with that panel, that frustration goes into that panel, and you're gonna beat your head against that panel, and that might not be the day for you to accomplish that panel. You know, and don't let it always be like, well, I want to get this done by the end of the day. I can tell you, building some bikes and stuff, that bike goes in the corner, I might not go back to it for 3 weeks. You know, I use the art to inspire me. I use the art to get me to the level of trying to accomplish exactly what it is that I want out of the piece. The exact feeling I want you guys to feel when you look at the piece. And you can't push yourself there. You have to allow it to come out of you. And so it's not every day that might come out of you. It might not be the day. It might be tomorrow. It might be the next day. Maybe today's the day I should go work on the mill and I should machine something, and not the day I should be shaping metal. And so think about those things. Think about all those different aspects when you are shaping or even creating or planning the piece that you're trying to create. You know, try to put that energy into it. Try to put that thought process into it. And just know with metal, it doesn't always go the way you want it to go. It can go that way, and we all hope it goes that way very easily. But it's persistence. It's going through, it's watching something move where you didn't expect it to, and figuring out how to address that, how to change that, and get back to always going the direction that you wanted to go. But it's never just gonna go that way. It's gonna go like this. It's a path that's gonna finally get you there. And it's really like, when I first started shaping metal, it was like, this piece looks not very good. Like, it's wavy, it's this, it's that. Like, how do I do this? But that same piece ends up being that finished piece as long as you persist at it. As long as you look at the piece and be like, okay, I got to address this, needs to be shrunk, this needs to be stretched, I got to take this in, and I know we all know there's only, you know, we can only really shrink and stretch metal. There's not much more we can do than those things. And it's about how we go about addressing that. Every project is different how you're going to address that. Me and Jerry were talking about how to, you know, tuck with a wrinkle basically and trap the metal in and bring it in. And some of those aspects you really come down to just simple hammer techniques, simple ways that you hit it. Look at the metal, look at the hard way of the metal. If you're trying to drive that metal into itself to stack it up and make it thicker, think of the most logical way that you can swing the hammer to actually get that to happen. That way you're not just going forward and backwards with your metal shaping, that you're actually kind of headed in the direction that you're trying to go. And a lot of it just comes down to that logic, just that simple logic of, okay, let me just slow down, let me take a look at it, let me address it, and what is the best way that I go about trying to get there? Because I've seen a ton of metal shapers, we all see things different. There's no right way, there's no wrong way, it's just whatever works for you. It's whatever technique that you're not necessarily good at, but whatever just happens to come out of you and work with you for that piece. Sometimes some people will look at a piece and they look at, well, I'm going to shrink it to accomplish that. Some people look at it and they're like, well, I want to draw that metal out to accomplish that shape. You know, I can't say one way is correct and one way is not. It's just how you go about it. And if you think about that process as much as you possibly can prior to going into starting that, sometimes it might make your process simpler. It might make it less frustrating for you. And I think that's, I think the frustration sometimes people feel with shaping metal is what gets them deterred from persisting. And I want everybody to know that's gonna be there, period. Just know that you just persist past that point. You persist past what was the problem and into the finish, into the solution, because that panel will come together, whatever it is. It'll finally start coming together and forming what you have in your head and what you want to see. If it doesn't, then you reassess what you did, why it won't, and start over. Grab a new piece, go at it. But no matter what, you're always learning these different techniques and learning these different things.
So that was amazing. He had everybody in the shop just captivated. And if you didn't get something from that, you just weren't listening. I'd like to thank everybody that was here for wearing their mask while inside. I just went this morning for a COVID test, and if that comes back positive, I'll definitely let you know about it. If any of you have had a test after the event or are feeling symptoms, I'd appreciate it if you would let me know, and I'll put the word out so everybody that was in attendance will know that they should go take a test or do something, inform their friends and family that they were exposed to COVID while they were here. And don't forget about the diamide clamp 10% discount. That will be up 2 weeks after the event, so that's coming up pretty soon. He said he might let it run a little bit longer if there's enough activity. So you can look in the description below, and there is a link. Metal Bash 10 is the code to get your 10% discount. If you copy the link below and put it into your browser, it'll take you right to the diamide site and apply the 10% discount. As I said earlier, if you have any video of Gene Winfield speaking on Saturday morning and it has audio along with it, please send it to me and I can get a good section of his speech out in a video. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next installment of the presenters at the Northern California Metal Bashing Meet. If you enjoyed your time while you were here at the Metal Bashing Meet, buy me a coffee. See ya.